You're driving it, very excited because you have like this $2.5 million car that you just got, and boom, you crash it against a wall. You don't need a PhD in economics to know that the value of that car decreased sharply, not because you drove it out of the lot, but because you drove it into a wall. Like, this is a crash that only rearranged the way in which those atoms were connected. So what we're destroying here is physical order. What we're destroying here is information. So what this teaches us is that this car was actually made of information and that the value of that car was connected to that physical order. So, but to understand what's so special about that physical order, we need to compare apples and apples. And the true difference between these two types of apples is not their price or their complexity, because I can very easily argue that the apple on the right is much more complex than the apple of the left, because the molecular mechanisms that the apple on the right uses to build itself are far superior than any of the mechanisms that are available inside, that silicon apple.
Great illustration.
The true difference between these two apples is that the first apple existed first in the world and then in our heads. There was a world in which there were apples and there was no word for apple. The second apple is an apple that existed first in someone's head and then in the world. And what that tells us is that these products are not just made of physical order, but they're made of crystallized imagination, okay, which is order that was originally formed on mental computations and then we disembodied into a product. So let's think of international trade now that we understand products as embodiments of information and imagination. And here
I got distracted because I was making this video, and then I was going to go to my history because I just watched that, and Grim Grizz was live streaming, and he was talking about my conversation with Peugeot, and so I jumped in there and had a moment with Grim, and Lynn Lavoie was there, and Sally dropped in, so it was a nice moment. But I like how Hidalgo mentions the apple and the apple, and the real things are things that are more real at more layers and in more levels are just simply more real. And the more layers and levels you can stack up upon them, they are more real.